Just a couple of months ago now, Joey Logano once again proved why NASCAR was seen by most racing fans as a laughingstock, as he rode his average finish of 17th place straight to the top, winning his third Cup championship in only 6 years. NASCAR's had a win-and-you're-in style playoff format for around a decade now. It's a style of championship that's typical of most American sports, but in the world of motorsport, it's an alien concept. In Formula 1, on the other hand, the pursuit of a world championship has always been about the consistent performances for a year-in points format. But what if we flip the script? What if F1's decades-old tradition of crowning the best over an entire season was replaced with the chaos and kind of drama of NASCAR's playoff format? Would it reward the same champions, or would the pressure cooker of eliminations create new heroes and shocking upsets? To find that out, we're going to reimagine the 2024 F1 World Championship under the NASCAR playoff system. It's a format designed to prioritise winning above all else, where every race could make or break your season. We'll break down the contenders, we'll analyse how this alternate universe would unfold, and we'll ask the ultimate question: does the playoff format crown the best driver across a season, or does it simply crown the one who happened to be in the right place at the right time? So, for a bit of background, the NASCAR playoff format works a little something like this. The first 26 races are considered the regular season, and the last 10 races of the season are the playoff races. The top 16 drivers make the playoffs. This top 16 is decided based on who has the most race wins. If there's less than 16 race winners from the first 26 races, then the field is filled by non-race winners who have the most points. The playoffs are split into segments of 3 races, at the end of which the 4 lowest scoring drivers are eliminated each time until the final race, at which point you're left with 4 drivers, which are known as the final 4, obviously, and whoever finishes highest of that final 4 in the final race of the season is considered the champion. So stats reset at pretty much every cut-off point, so everything you've done during the season up to that point basically means nothing. There are playoff points, but I'm not quite sure how they work. Most people aren't quite sure how they work, so we'll just ignore them. If you want a more in-depth explanation of NASCAR's playoff format, I recommend you watch a video on it by a YouTuber called Slapshoes. He explains the format quite well. He also explains why people think it's kind of shit. Obviously, the numbers for NASCAR's playoff field don't quite work for F1, because NASCAR's got a much longer calendar, and it's got a larger field. So we're going to tweak the numbers a little bit. In my F1 playoffs, here's how it's going to go. So in 2024, there were 24 races on the F1 calendar compared to NASCAR's 36. So we're going to cut down the playoffs from 10 races to 7. Sprint race wins won't count towards win tallies, but points that are earned in sprint races will count. The playoff field's going to be cut down to 9 cars instead of 16. At every cut-off point, 3 drivers will be eliminated, and at the end, we'll be left with a Championship 3 instead of a Championship 4. It just works better with how I've done it. There won't be any stage or playoff points, because F1 doesn't have stages. I don't really understand how stage points work in NASCAR itself, and I've already explained that I don't know nor care to find out how playoff points work. So now that's cleared up, well, about as much as you can possibly clear up the concept of using a playoff format in motor racing, let's just get into it. To make things a bit easier, rather than tracking stats race by race, which will probably leave us here forever, we're going to go over the regular season standings 5 or 6 races at a time, because the real excitement in this system doesn't really start until we begin to approach the playoffs. So by the end of round 6 in Miami, Max Verstappen's pretty much already locked himself into the playoffs and then some, as he's collecting wins like they're going out of fashion. I think people have already forgotten just how dominant Verstappen's run at the start of the season actually was, considering how close Lando came to him across the back half of the real-life 2024 season. Speaking of Lando, he's also locked himself into a playoff place barring a season where half the grid wins a race. Spoiler alert, they don't. Carlos Sainz's win at Albert Park also guarantees him a place in our 9-man postseason. The rest of the standings follow pretty much as you'd expect, if we ignore the surprise appearance from Lance Stroll, which was quickly put right from round 4 onwards. Following the British Grand Prix, the playoff picture's been shaken up a little bit. We have 3 new race winners in Charles Leclerc, finally breaking his Monaco curse, and the Mercedes duo of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Despite both having lower points totals than Sergio Perez and Oscar Piastri at this stage of the season, their wins lock them in at 5th and 6th in the standings. Max doesn't seem to have gotten the memo about the stats reset, as he's already managed to rack up 7 race wins. Leave some for the rest of them, mate. Fernando Alonso is in no man's land at this point, as he's got a healthy points margin both behind and ahead of him, with constructors behind Aston Martin really having struggled up to this point. And to be honest, you've got more chance of finding a brick in a cobweb than 2 working cells in Lance Stroll's brain. So now, let's move on to the final race before the playoffs, where things start to get a bit juicy. So, the playoffs have now arrived, these are your standings. It seems Max finally got the memo, as he's not won a race since the Spanish Grand Prix an entire 7 rounds ago now. In this time frame, the only new winner we've seen is Oscar Piastri, as he took the checker flag at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Besides that, it's the same lineup we saw checking in at the end of round 12. And when compared to the real-life 2024 season, the 9 playoff drivers are the exact same ones who were top 9 in standings in our actual reality. But they do appear in a different order. The top 4 are the same in both realities, but using the playoff format, Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz swap places, as Hamilton's got 1 more win across the season up to this point, and George Russell leapfrogs a winless Sergio Perez, though he would have 2 wins if he were not disqualified at the Belgian Grand Prix. From this point onwards, each playoff driver has 3 races to lock themselves into the next round, and all stats are reset. After the round of 9 and the first cut-off, Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso are all finally eliminated from World Championship contention, without so much as a whimper, as they finish on 23, 7 and 4 points respectively. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly considering how a season's gone so far, Max Verstappen's gone winless in the round of 9, though he does make it through with 26 points to spare thanks to his consistency. Norris, Leclerc and Sainz take the wins in the round of 9. It's now time for the round of 6, where all stats are once again reset. The elimination rounds of the playoffs are now complete. Max Verstappen and George Russell have won their way into the Championship 3, while Charles Leclerc gets in on points over Oscar Piastri. There's a shock exit for Lando Norris, who in real life fought so closely with Max Verstappen, but he's ended up behind Piastri in the final standings of this format. Carlos Sainz bows out of Ferrari in P6 as his season comes to an end. So it'll be a fight between Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull drivers for the title of World Champion, which means that McLaren, the real-life Constructors' Champions, won't have a horse in the championship race. Yeah, you are seeing that, right? You don't need to adjust your screen or anything. In a world where F1 used a playoff format, Charles Leclerc would be your 2024 World Champion. Max Verstappen would actually finish the worst of the Championship 3 drivers, as he finished 10 seconds adrift of George Russell in 6th. Lando Norris, who missed out on the finale by just 16 points, went on to win the final race of the season, which means that if he'd made it there, he could have easily walked to the championship had he actually performed better. In our actual reality, Leclerc put up a formidable challenge to Verstappen's dominant at the start of the season, but he did suffer quite a few setbacks in the latter half, and he finished nearly 100 points adrift of our real-life champion. So, if this proves anything, it's that playoff formats in motorsport, they're a cool concept, it's fun to look at, don't get me wrong, but drivers winning at the right place at the right time, it's really gimmicky and it doesn't make for a legitimate championship. I mean, Max Verstappen won 9 races this season, but because he didn't win in that specific final race, that doesn't matter. Charles Leclerc's your champion. This is a direct statement to NASCAR now, even though this video is about F1. Get your shit together. No one wants to see Joey Logano win championships he really, really doesn't deserve. And give us back a year in points format. It worked. We liked it. Just give it back to us. Cheers. I'll see you in the next one. Low taper fan. Low taper fan.